Siren. First Wednesday of the month. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through all the different grades of paper out there, from rough to hot press to cold press, and what they all mean, as well as different brands, so you can decide what paper is best for you in your type of painting style. Hey, and if you're new here, I'm Allie. I teach watercolor and release new watercolor tutorials every week, as well as tech tutorials for artists. Okay, so when you're searching for watercolor paper out there, it can be very overwhelming. And let me tell you that watercolor paper is one of the most important pieces of your supplies for watercolor. Like, the most important. There are a number of reasons why paint will react differently to different types of watercolor paper. This will greatly depend on the quality of your paper as well as your paper texture. So most student grade papers such as like Arteza and Strathmore, Canson, those types of papers are mostly made of paper pulp or synthetic paper pulp blends. These student grade papers tend to be oversized or processed, so that means that the paint will not layer on your paper and will actually create little beads and pools on top of the paper surface because it just cannot seep into the paper. So the advantages of using a quality professional watercolor paper is basically what you would think it would be. You'll be able to get richer colors when they dry, the paint will be able to move across your paper, you'll be able to do lifting effects, so if you didn't want paint in a certain spot on your painting, you'll be able to lift that off the paper better, and you'll just really feel a lot more confident in your watercolor skills when you have the right type of papers. So when you're searching for a quality watercolor paper, just because it says acid-free does not mean it's a professional grade paper. What you're looking for typically is the 100% cotton on your paper. Or just like I said, the 140-pound cold press paper is the one that I love to use for all of my pet portraits. Okay, so now let's talk about all the different watercolor paper textures that are out there. First watercolor paper texture that I want to talk about is hot press. Hot press is a very smooth textured watercolor paper. It's because the fibers have been all pressed down, so it's leaving very little texture and tooth. Siren. First Wednesday of the month. With hot press paper, your paint is going to dry a lot faster, but you will get a more richer color of paint. So depending on your painting style, hot press can be great if you are wanting to achieve a mixed media effect. So if you like to use watercolors along with like colored pencils, pens, markers, it's a great paper texture to be able to achieve all different sorts of mediums. Cold press paper is one that is a very standard and most popular paper used by watercolor artists. It has a medium grade tooth to it, so you're able to get really beautiful textures. The paint is not going to dry as fast onto the paper, so you have more time to work with it. It layers really nicely, and you're able to get even some dry brush effects with this type of paper. And then the last paper I want to talk about is a rough paper texture. And rough paper is not really commonly used in the watercolor field, but it is a really fun paper if you are looking for a very like dry brush effect onto trees or rocks, things like that. So I really would only use this type of paper if you were looking for a more rough painting style. When it comes to paper weight, 140-pound cold press paper is really your go-to paper. To help with it not buckling, I tend to use the Arches watercolor block. The block is handy because it secures the paper down, so if you didn't feel like stretching your paper or if you didn't feel like taping it down, this is a great option to use. If you can afford it, they make a 300-pound weight watercolor paper. I personally don't use this, but I know it's out there. Watercolor canvases may be something that you'd be interested in exploring. I've explored them a little bit within my work, and I find that they just react differently to the paint again. They seem to be a little bit of a smoother texture, and it really just depends on the brand that you buy. Now, if you're selling original paintings, I really highly recommend using a professional grade watercolor paper. It's okay to use student grade papers when you are practicing, and as well as if you are creating paintings that you plan on digitizing and creating onto products such as mugs. Alright you guys, so that is my rundown on all the different watercolor paper types out there. I hope you found this video helpful. Just make sure you find the right paper for the right situation within your paintings and you will be golden. So if you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you could hit the like button, subscribe for future tutorials, and I will see you next time.